welcome to this Gantua Group webinar. You have two co-hosts this afternoon or this evening, depending on what you want. Actually, we are also co-chairs in the specification subcommittee. My name is David. We also have Loïc here, and we're going to talk about PDF pre-flight. Let's get started here. We're talking about PDF pre-flights. I wrote a bold statement. It's nearly 30 years old. I don't think I'm that wrong. I think the first version of both PDF Toolbox and PitStop were created somewhere around 96, 97, that kind of time frame. So we're now 2024, so we're getting up to 30 years old, and we're going to talk about whether that is still relevant or not, and why.
It's quite an old concept, huh? Pre-flighting. It was first mentioned in 1990 by Mr. Weger and Bertolina. That's an analogy with the aeronautics industry, where when the plane takes off, before the pilots have to go through a list of items to be checked before the plane can take off. And actually, that's the same concept that we apply today to PDF pre-flight. You have a list of items that you need to pre-flight, and you want to be sure you can send the file to production once you have done those checks. You can use today standards such as the PDFX pre-flight profiles or the Enfocus pre-flight profiles, or you can build your own pre-flight profiles to do your custom checks. That's also feasible. But yeah, typically a pre-flight result in a report, because of course you want to check, but you want to have the summary of those checks and possible fixes that you applied. That's mainly what pre-flighting is. You will hear that there is a difference, of course, between checks and fixes. A check, basically, that controls a specific requirement. Is there an issue with a font or with an image, and so on? And if there is a problem, then it will be listed in the report. We tend to see two kinds of issues. The one that are very critical, for example, a non-embedded font or a corrupted font or a corrupt document even. Of course, those documents you cannot send to production. But sometimes you will say, okay, there are some issues which are a little bit less severe. Might be that a font's text size is just a little bit below a certain limit. So to some extent, it may not be that critical, but still needs some control. And this is where an operator, for example, could use the report to have a closer look at the possible issues remaining. A fix is, by extension or by contrast, if you want, the fact that not only you check that a certain problem exists, but you can also check, you can also modify, correct that issue, and modify the file. A typical example is the possibility to embed a font. If a font is found not embedded, that you can say, okay, it's not embedded, but please, if you can embed that font, so this is not an issue anymore. Some fix will occur by default. For example, if you ask a PDF to comply to a PDF standard, it may be that some fixes happen without you even noticing it. But it could be as well that your own pre-flight profile, you say, okay, if there is a font non-embedded, I was saying, please embed that font. That's a typical fix that you could require on your own pre-flight profile. So some profile will by default do only checking, but also will do apply fixes. For example, for the PDFX standards and also the Gantua Group pre-flight profiles, you see that more than often they come with two versions, one that would only report errors and one that would also apply some fixes. So as I say, pre-flight is a new, and actually pre-flight is not just about PDF, David mentioned, but actually the need for pre-flighting files started with PostScript. PostScript appeared in 1984, but soon enough, the RIP engine that processed the PostScript file in many cases, if not all the time, errors were found, but yet it was difficult to trace those errors, not very convenient. So very quickly, a need for tools that would preflight those files appeared. And by 1991, we already had solution that would do PostScript preflight. And as David mentioned, the most known tools for preflighting PDF files actually already started a long time ago to be PostScript preflighting tools at the beginning. So yeah, PDF preflight. So the change with PDF preflight is that suddenly you could display file in a very more convenient way, and you could detect errors much quicker. Doesn't mean that PDF fixed every single error by itself. Still error existed, but the solution then quickly turned from being PostScript preflight editor to preflight solution to PDF preflighting solutions. So that was by David mentioned. I had a slightly different date from David, but that's not very critical. You get the idea. Okay, but then suddenly you had those solutions for preflighting PDF files, and that was very nice. But the thing is, every printer started to have their own PDF requirements. I want a file to be this way or this way. And designers had to adapt to every single printer. They had to say, okay, if I have to send a file to printer A, I have to make a file this way. If I send a file to printer B, I have to make the file this way. That was kind of a nightmare, at least. So the need for standardizing the preflight became soon very urgent. And by 2001, the ISO standard committee created the first specification dedicated to printing that we all know as PDFX 1A. It also has a specific ISO name 15930 and so on. But yeah, we all know the shorter version. And after that, of course, the technology evolved, the RIP engine evolved, and many specifications followed until today with the PDFX6 that exists. Note that the Genfor Group did some efforts. As you may know already, if you're not, the Genfor Group was founded in 2002 with the intention to define the best practices for the printing industry. And the realization was that PDFX standards were great, yet might not be sufficient. And since then, they have defined specification. I should say we now, but the Genfor Group defined the specification on top of PDFX standards for specific printing segments. So for example, you can find specific preflight profile for commercial printing or packaging or newspapers or whatever industry you are on, you can find your own set of Genfor Group profile. The latest specification dates from 22. And if you are interested in learning more, know that there is actually a webinar dedicated to those preflight profiles, so to those standards, sorry. Feel free to have a look at. And of course, the next specification from Genfor Group, we will see when that comes. So very quickly, you see that the difference between the PDFX and the Genfor Group preflight profile. As I said, the Genfor Group used PDFX standard as a default, but had some specification. For example, something which is like overprint problem, it's not covered by PDFX standard, but it's covered by the Genfor Group specification. Hence the interest to use those preflight profile because they are somehow more complete than the PDFX standards. So when it comes to that, you say, okay, that's a nice story. I learned some things today, but in case of you are still wondering why you should preflight, basically what we see is that in average, less than 10% of files come print ready at the printing plant. So in almost every case, you will have errors. You will need to fix those files. And the thing is that the later you will discover those errors, the more it will cost you. If you detect some issues when the file comes in, that's fine. If you wait to deliver the file to the customer, and the customer reports that something is wrong, then you are losing a huge amount of money. So yeah, you will still find some well-known errors, missing fonts, low-res images, no bleeds, and so on and so on. And yeah, definitely you want to detect that as soon as possible. What could go wrong? Yeah, could be that the font, the nice font that was in the design was not embedded, and the RIP replaced that font with some ugly one. The color conversion could be wrong. Some page boxes could be incorrectly set, low resolution image, only to name a few. That could be a long list, possibly more than an hour to cover all the cases. So yeah, I hope that you found interesting this little introduction on the PREFLIGHT history and why you should PREFLIGHT. And I hand over to David for the next step.
So by the way, I think your dates were correct. If I think back of it, I think the first version of PitStop was created in 1997. Same for PDF Toolbox, but both of those did not contain PDF PREFLIGHT. PREFLIGHT was added a little bit later, and actually I think it was called Checkup PDF or something like that first as a separate plugin for Acrobat, and then it got merged into PitStop. And on the Kala side, about the same thing happened. They had something called PDF Inspector, which was PREFLIGHT. And then, so 1998 is definitely the right date there. Old history.
I won't question your experience on the topic.
So one of the things that I think is important to mention here also is that PREFLIGHT is perhaps not PREFLIGHT, or at least we need to agree what the definition of PREFLIGHT is. When people started talking about PREFLIGHTing documents, there was a term that was coined by someone at Adobe that was in-flight. And the idea still kind of lives on today, although in a slightly different way. But the idea was that instead of making a creative document and then exporting it to PDF and then doing PREFLIGHT on it, maybe it would be better to do checking as you are creating the document. And that was the term in-flight. And if you look at InDesign today, there is still a concept in InDesign of PREFLIGHTing as well. And this is a screenshot of some of the settings there. So along the lines of what Loïc just said, the later you detect something, the bigger the cost is. Doing PREFLIGHT inside of InDesign actually makes a lot of sense. And there are those people in our industry who would say that this is PREFLIGHT, and once you export it to PDF, it's something else, post-flight maybe, I don't know, but it's still PREFLIGHT when you look at it from a printing point of view. So when we talk about, with the Gantour group, talk about PREFLIGHT, we typically think of the PDF-based portion of PREFLIGHT, but that's not all there is available. And so one of the questions that you could ask yourself is, where do I want to do PREFLIGHT, and what is better? Do I do it in the native document? Do I do it when the PDF is created? Should I PREFLIGHT before it is sent to the printer? Should I PREFLIGHT after it is sent to the printer? And in all honesty, the answer is the more you can PREFLIGHT, the better it's going to be for everyone involved. So if you have the opportunity to use the, for example, InDesign PREFLIGHT that they offer, then that makes total sense. There are a number of things that are also much easier to detect in the native document. It is easier to do things like checking whether all the files are there, whether they are linked to the right images, what happens with page structure, what happens with paragraph settings, and all of those things are easy to check in the creative application. Once you export to a PDF file, a lot of that information is gone. And so if you want to do those checks, you have to do them in the creative application. Of course, once you've converted to PDF, if I am the creative and I convert to PDF, it does make sense to check the PDF I just created before I send it to a printer, because again, it's a cost issue. If I can intercept any errors before I send it to a printer, who perhaps then waits 3 days before the file is checked after it comes in, and then only comes back 2 hours before the print deadline, then, well, it's going to be better if I detect it ahead of time. So pre-flighting at the creative stage before you send it to the next person in the workflow definitely makes sense. And for the printer, of course, when files come in from outside, it makes absolute sense to check them before you start using them internally. In general, the advice that we typically give when we talk to people is, if you have a very controlled workflow where you are in control of all of the steps and you are 100% certain that nothing can go wrong in between the steps, then yeah, it makes sense to skip pre-flights in between each of these steps. Yeah, if I start from, I'll give you an example. If I start from a design template and I can only enter some text, and then there is a set fixed process that exports to a PDF document. Well, if my template is okay and I've checked that once, then the resulting PDF file is going to be okay as well, because the whole process is very controlled. In reality, there are only very few scenarios where this is the case, where things are 100% controlled. And so if it's not 100% controlled, then you try to do quality control. So what can be pre-flighted?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a very both a simple question, but somehow can be confusing. First of all, it's important to remind that pre-flight is very technical. We are very looking at the structure of the PDF file, and nothing which is that David will mention later, but which is not technical. So very typically and by the way, we made, the Genvo group made that poster that you can find online as well. I said, I put the URL over there, but just go to the Genvo group website and you will find this poster very easily of the 9 reasons why you want to pre-flight a document. And yeah, it's very technical. So a pre-flight is going to look at possibly, are my fonts okay? Is font corrupted, or is it a font that your RIP would have issue with? Are my fonts embedded? Because if they are not, I may have an issue. Are they low resolution image? Because I much often those days, but still, a very typical one is, are there any texts or anything in white overprint? In that case, it would be simply disappearing at the printing stage. So yeah, you want to detect this. Any blending color spaces, missing RGB, small text in coverage, is there simply too much ink on this document, on this page? Are there any thin lines that could disappear when the file is rasterized? Page box misdefined. Is the format correct? Interactive elements. So of course, in some cases, format is a good one. You can detect that, but of course you need some insight. You need some information, and what it could be some metadata that precise the information, the format that you expect from the file. But at least you can detect if the format which is found in the document complies to what you expect to be. So everything which is very technical, you can detect. But David now, I guess, is going to explain you what is, okay, so David, just a little bit of patience. I was too hurry, too quick. So I was saying that, yeah, PREFLIGHT may be, maybe sometimes agnostic, meaning that there are checks that you will do whatever the product type. If a font is corrupted, whatever you are printing, a business card or a wide format banner, packaging, that's a font issue that you need to detect. Same that for spot colors, if you don't want spot colors, whatever the product type, you would check that. It doesn't really matter. However, in some cases, the PREFLIGHT will be more specific. The resolution of an image, that's not really the same value for, if it's a business card, once again, or a wide format, or brochure, or a book cover versus, so that the product type of what you are going to print may affect the specific check that you are going to do. So now it's a good time for David to talk to you about what cannot be PREFLIGHTed by contrast.
Yeah, and it is important to realize these as well. And you already talked about it a little bit. There is something that I typically refer to as job intent. And job intent is how do you intend the job to be printed? If I have a business card, as a very simple example, am I making a single-sided or a double-sided business card? Is it 5 centimeters by 3 centimeter, or is it 6 by 4? Those are the things that are job intent. I go to a web-to-print site, for example. I order something. It has specific dimensions. It will be either single-sided or double-sided. The price will probably depend on that. So that is job intent. And then the question is, can you pre-flight against that? And the answer is both yes and no. Technically, of course, you can pre-flight against it. I can, in any pre-flight software today, I can make a pre-flight check that says, look at the trim box of the file and fail the file, so generate an error, if the trim box is not 6 centimeter wide by 4 centimeter high. That is not a problem. Technically, that can be done. In reality, it can only be done when the necessary information about that job is available. And so when you start looking at what am I going to do in quality control, you not only have to think about what Loïc was just talking about, the print process and so on, and what are the things that are that need to be in the PDF file for it to be technically printable, but you also need to think about what type of product am I pre-flighting? What did the customer actually order? And the more information you have about context, the more you're actually going to be able to check afterwards. You can very well check for single-sided versus double-sided business cards, because the expectation at least would be that if I order a single-sided business card, I'm probably going to have to upload a PDF that has only 1 page. If it's a double-sided business card, there's going to have to be 2 pages in it. So yes, you can pre-flight and check a lot of these things if you have the information about what you want to do. You also have to be very aware that there are a lot of things that you cannot reliably pre-flight, and some of those may still come in the future. There are things where that becomes where pre-flight becomes definitely more powerful. But if you think about things like typos, a very common question, I get PDF files, can I do spell check on a PDF? Well, that is a good question, but it is not necessarily easy. First of all, PDF is not a very structured format, and that is saying it lightly. Essentially, you have no structure in PDF whatsoever. So there is no concept of words or sentences or paragraphs, or there is not even a concept of text in many cases, like language associated with text, or you might not even be able to understand the text automatically. Even if we can read it when it's printed, it might not be possible for a piece of software to extract meaning from the text that you have in there. in that type of scenario, it is very difficult to imagine how you're going to do spell checking. On top of that, doing spell checking in a fully automated process, well, when you've used that in Word, you know that very quickly you run into issues where certain things are indeed correct, but they will not be in any dictionary that you use to spell check. So there are a lot of challenges with something that appears to be as simple as checking for typos. So typically not included in a quality control process. One of the other very common things is, oh, but I want to look for content issues. Maybe it is certain trademarked images, maybe it is copyrighted text or images, but it's not always about trademarks. The content issues may also be, I'm printing banners, but I cannot print anything where I have violent images. I cannot have weapons in things. Yeah. So there are a lot of things related to content that, again, are not easy to check in a pre-flight process. And then the third thing, and there is a thin line here, and we can pre-flight against thin lines, but there is a thin line here between what is really technical information and design information. So one of the things that pre-flight is really not designed to do is check the quality of a PDF file. We're not looking at design. We're not evaluating the creativity that went into what was produced. And sometimes you kind of reach the border, a borderline where certain choices that a creative person can make have to be pre-flighted against. If I'm making something that is going to end up on packaging, for example, well, packages typically have restrictions on how small text can be. And so, yeah, maybe as a creative person, I have very good eyes and I can think that 4-point text is a really cool idea. It is not, by the way, but maybe as a creative person, that is what I want to do. But the production requirements for this packaging may require a printer to have at least 5-point text or at least 6-point text or whatever it is. And that may be because there are regulations or laws against it. It may be because they can't be printed. Yeah. So sometimes you reach an area where we do check a little bit into what you could call design choices. But in general, there is no pre-flight software that is going to pre-flight your file and say, this is really not beautiful, I can't print it. So anything that has to do with design and creative choices is typically excluded from pre-flight as well. And so what are we going to pre-flight that with, Loïc? I'll tell you. One of the fun things I sometimes do is read questions on the internet about people asking or telling about the problems they have, the communication between creatives and printers. It's a very interesting topic. The creatives think that the printer is to blame, and the printers always think that creatives are to blame. That's how it goes.
I've been on both sides, I can tell.
And it hasn't changed for the last 30 years, and it probably will never change. So one of the cool things is that you have someone who designs a PDF file, and they will ask their printer, so how shall I supply this file? And if you think that the answers from the printer here, like give me a PDF, when you think that this is exaggerated, really it is not. Those are all things that you get that I've seen online in real communication between creatives and printers. So if a person in a workflow, printer usually says, well, just give me a PDF file, what should you give? What is the right file to give? Or otherwise said, if I want to pre-flight my PDF, of course you're going to give a PDF file, but if I want to pre-flight my PDF before I send it to someone who just tells me, give me a PDF, then what type of PDF do I give? Well, my answer would be, and has been, use a standard pre-flight profile to begin with, of course. And because I'm part of the Gantour group, my answer would be use a Gantour group profile. But actually, if I was not part of the Gantour group, my answer would be the same. Why? Well, it's a Gantour group profile. So it contains a lot of checks and some fixes in most cases that check for really sensible things. We know that the Gantour group profiles are built on top of PDFX. So we know that the file is also going to be compatible with the PDFX ISO standard. And so we're pretty sure that this is going to be a good file. The only real question is what type of Gantour group profile are you going to use? Well, in this case, the Gantour Group 2022 profiles are the most recent ones, but they're also what I would, or what we as a Gantour Group would consider to be the best ones. They are built on top of PDFX4, which is the more modern standard that we really, really want you to use. And so that makes sense. As Loïc already mentioned in the history part, the Gantour Group doesn't just have one profile. There are different profiles for different market segments, production technologies. So then the question is, which of those things should I use? Well, the most generic one that we have is called sheet-fed CMYK. And so most generic in this context means it contains a number of pre-flight checks and fixes. But it is there are not really very specific choices in there. So if you don't know anything else, if the printer just says, give me a PDF, the sheet-fed CMYK is a very neutral profile. And so it's a safe one to use if you don't have any more information. Hopefully you talk to a printer who is a little bit, well, smarter than just saying, give me a PDF file. And so the printer might say, give me a PDFX, which granted is a little bit more in terms of guidance, at least. My answer wouldn't change. If you're asking for a PDFX file and that is all the information you have, then the Gantour group profiles, as I said, are compliant with PDFX. And so my answer remains exactly the same. If you give them a Gantour group 2022 sheet-fed CMYK, you have the highest chance of doing something that is correct. So printer can be even more smart and could say, give me a Gantour group PDF. And guess what? My answer is not going to change, obviously. I still don't know that much. I still don't know, for example, what type of printing process or anything like that. I'm just being told, comply with the Gantour group, and I would probably give the same file. When can you do better? Well, you can do better if the answer is give me a PDF suitable for banner printing, or if you know that you are creating a PDF file that will then be used as a banner, for example, or if you know that what you're designing is actually going to be printed on a digital print process, or it is going to be a billboard, a PDF file, or it's an advertisement. So the more information you have about the product that you're creating, the market segment that you're in, or really the product that you're designing, the more accurate you can be in how you do quality control and what profile you're going to use. And so if you know that it is a banner that you're creating, then I would still do, again, to a group profile. But in this case, I would choose the large format PDF profile that the Gantour group has. So the more information you have about a PDF file, the more clever you can be in selecting which pre-flight profile to select. And that may seem absolutely obvious. The problem is when you see how people talk to each other in the graphic arts workflow, there are a lot of cases where the communication isn't very specific and where people really say things like, well, just give me a PDF file. And that leaves creative people, for example, with not a lot of guidance as to what they should be doing. Knowing that this Sheetfed CMYK profile from the Gantt group is a very generic one and probably the one that you should use by default, unless you have more information about what is going on, is very sensible advice and something that you should remember. The other thing that you should know is that once you know what kind of profile you use, the Gantt workgroup has something that is called application settings. And this is the application settings page on the Gantt workgroup website. The idea behind application settings is that there are a number of vendors who are compliant with what the Gantt workgroup is doing. And so for PREFLIGHT software, you would be able to go, well, you actually don't have to in many cases because it's already built into the software, but you would be able to go to this page and download the profiles for the Gantt workgroup specifications. But if you think about the creative process, the Gantt workgroup also has application settings for those applications. And so if I'm designing something in InDesign and I know that afterwards I'm going to want to pre-flight the resulting PDF with a Gantt workgroup specification, then download the application settings for InDesign from the Gantt workgroup website. And that will, the PDF export settings that you will find in there, give you the highest chance of making a good PDF file. It's not 100% guarantee. It's not because you use these application settings that your resulting PDF is necessarily going to be correct, but it is going to be at least in line with what we're doing afterwards during pre-flight. If you know that the pre-flight is going to look for a minimum of 150 dpi, then your PDF export settings should not downsample images to 50 dpi. That's the kind of thing that you want to ensure. And so the application settings here are designed to be compatible with the quality control that is going to be done later. So we've been talking about this for quite a while, about the whole pre-flight thing. I think one of the questions could be, Loïc, is pre-flight still relevant today at all?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, because one of the amusing thing is that you could say, yeah, come on, that's 30 years now that we do PDF, so we should be capable of having good PDF and now without the need for pre-flighting anymore. But actually, what's very funny is indeed, yeah, every time, yeah. So indeed, what happened if you look at the past and specifically the last 10 to 15 years, or 10 years would say, there was a time where, okay, the overall quality of PDF was not very good. And to make it print ready, you had to rely on PREFLIGHT solution to bring the level of quality to a print ready state. But along the way, the PDF creators improved InDesign, was appeared, and the quality of the PDF improved to the point that the need for a pre-flighting tool certainly didn't disappear, but the effort to bring that file to a print-ready state was much lower. And then everything was fine until a few years ago, when we have seen this huge explosion of many PDF creators, mostly online, that somehow created not so great PDF file when it comes to printing. I mean, for displaying on screen, that's perfect. Yeah, you can do nice thing that you can share online, but when it comes to printing, you realize that the quality is suddenly starting to decrease again. And so the need for pre-flighting becomes even more relevant than ever, because we went through that peak where we thought, yeah, we reach maturity, we reach yeah, what we could expect from PDF creators. But yeah, certainly the quality decrease. And when you talk with printers, they say that the situation is worse and worse every year. So certainly PREFLIGHT will be even more critical today than it was already in the past. And yes, you see that some issues tend to reappear. I mean, the page boxes. Yeah, so sorry to say that, but speak to web developers trying to create PDF on open source libraries, and you say, hey, you know what? We need page boxes. Page what? I don't know what a page box is. So yeah, those kind of things, the fonts, the resolution, it's happening all over again. And yeah, PREFLIGHT for that is certainly relevant even 30 years later. But of course, at this point in time, you say, okay, you got me, I'm sold. I want to run to a shop and buy a PREFLIGHTing tool because I understood why I need it. But okay, which tool should I use? And of course, you would be amused by the situation. I'm not about to promote one tool among the other. But what I can say is that one that we can already disregard is Illustrator. If you are among the person that use Illustrator to PREFLIGHT to PDF, you certainly don't want to do that. And you don't have to take my words for granted, but once again, the Genval group has a lot of YouTube videos, and one is actually covering why Illustrator is not a PDF editor and the kind of catastrophes that you can expect by opening a file in Illustrator. So which should you use? Certainly not Illustrator. But then which one? Well, you want to use a native PDF editor. It's very important because those are the only ones that won't spoil the quality of the PDF. The good PREFLIGHT application, they preserve the printability of the document. They preserve the structure. I mean, they don't spoil the document. That's very important. And ideally, if you have to choose one, you want to choose one which uses the Genval group profiles. Lucky for you, the main solution on the market for PREFLIGHTing PDF use and give you access to the Genval group profile. So yeah, you won't have any surprises. But if at this point in time, you're still struggling about, okay, but which solution? Please tell me a name. What I can invite you is to go on the Genval group website where you can see the members. And in that members list, you will easily find solution that can offer PDF PREFLIGHT with the Genval group profiles. And then after you, up to you to choose the tool that you find the most suitable for you.
Okay, that brings us almost to the end of this webinar. I just wanted to take a moment to point you to the resources again. We've been talking about a lot of these things, but we still see that they are not used enough. Yeah. This webinar is organized by the Gantour Group. You know that the Gantour Group is a standardization organization. We are also a non-profit organization, and that means that we don't have to try and make a profit of the tools that we make and the things on the website and so on. So all of the webinars are free. You know that because you're watching one, but all of the ones that were in the past are free as well. And everything we have on our website is absolutely free. And so if you go to gwg.org, you will find a lot of the things that we have been talking about there. This application settings page that, again, lists a number of applications. And then for those applications, you can download things like expert settings or pre-flight profiles. So go there, look at whether the applications you are using are in that list, and then see whether they have application settings available. In some cases, you might not actually find application settings there, or you might find a simple document that says, you know what, everything that you need is already in the software that you're using, and you can find it there and there. So that is The ultimate goal that we have is to make sure that all of the Gantt work group compliance settings are already part of the software as it ships, so that you don't have to go jump through extra hoops to get it. Check that list of compatible vendors that Loïc was just talking about. That tells you whether a vendor is compliant. And there is actually a list there also specifically of vendors that have tested their solutions with the Gantt Output Suite, for example. And the Gantt Output Suite is a test suite. It's a set of PDF documents that can be used to verify that a workflow solution or a RIP is compatible with modern versions of PDF. And so there is a list of vendors that have done that and that are compliant, and then have instruction documents there on how the settings should be done, how the solution should be set up, what preferences should be on or not, in order to be compliant when PDFs are output, for example. That Gantt Output Suite is also just available for free on the Gantt Workgroup website. You can download it and you can use it to test your own output process with it, for example. Even better, the Gantt Workgroup has a program where you can use the Gantt Output Suite, perhaps with some training from a local provider, and then you can get a stamp of approval that says that you as a printer are capable of outputting modern PDF documents in the way that the designer has intended them. So that can information about that can also be found there. And then lastly, there are a lot of white papers, so very informative documents that you find on the Gantt Workgroup website that talk about PDFX, talk about transparency, talk about creating PDF from well, not from InDesign and other things, but from like Office type applications. So there is a lot of highly technical or rather overview white papers. Both categories are on there on the website as well, that you can just download and read. I mentioned the webinars. Loïc mentioned don't use Illustrator. I can only try to reinforce that message. Please do not think Illustrator is a PDF editor. But there are a lot more nice videos on the YouTube channel for the Gantt Workgroup. And so the example for Illustrator that Loïc was talking about is part of the 10 things you do with PDF and that you shouldn't be doing. You find the other 9 things that you shouldn't be doing with PDF. Well, they're all on there. If you have not seen those webinars, then please have a look. There is really good content there. And again, it is all free. So, and that, as far as we're concerned, I think, and I'll leave it on the Illustrator is not a PDF editor slide, just to reinforce that a bit more. But that, I think, brings us to the end of the webinar. If you still have questions, then now would be a really good time to ask it in the Q&A panel. I don't know if there is anything from if there is anything that could be answered. Now, there is actually a good question, and I want to answer it. So there is a question about why are you, I'll try to summarize. Why do you talk about this topic again? Everyone has heard it 1,000 times, and it doesn't teach anything to anyone. Actually, I think that is completely wrong. My experience, and I'm sure Loïc will have the same experience, but I will not talk for you. My experience is that when we go to customers, when I talk to people who are either on the creative side or on the production side, and we talk about these topics that we believe are really, really basic, the experience is every time that a lot of these things are new to people, yeah, and that repeating them is really important. And perhaps you have heard these things 1,000 times and you've internalized them, and this doesn't teach you anything new. That is possible, but there are certainly a lot of people in our industry for whom this information is still new or valuable, or they have to hear it again. Loïc already talked about there are more and more solutions, online editor solutions, for example, that don't behave really well when we talk about PDF. There are reasons for that. The reason is that PDF becomes more and more common, so more people have to implement it. The quality of software perhaps doesn't always increase over time, unfortunately as well. So very often support for PDF or support for graphic arts features and functionality is something that is added to it very quickly, and perhaps without the care that that should be taken for it. Yeah, and the same for people who come straight from school. Some things may be very obvious for us, but they may not be very obvious for someone who just comes from a graphic arts university and hasn't had the chance of building real life experience. So I don't think it is a bad thing to repeat these things. And while we think they are basic, I think a lot of people think that's not the case.
Yeah, and some applies to the designers, huh? Because there are a lot of designers who basically start with a computer on the side and a software on the other side, but they don't have any great experience of PDF. But it requires to be a good PDF, and they just produce PDF. Sometimes it's not the great requirement. So I think it benefits the whole industry, and indeed, we still see sometimes printers who actually don't have any pre-flighting tools. So as David mentioned, I think that there are a lot of space. Of course, for you, Ralph, if you're an experienced user and you know pre-flight, it could be somehow frustrated to hear that indeed. And I like your suggestion to announce upfront the kind of audience that we would target. But yeah, we certainly think that it's important to repeat this message.
Yeah, and then maybe the last one there very quickly as well. So maybe it's a good thing to advise designers how to work correctly.
Yeah.
Yes, true. And one of the reasons I believe that the Gantour Group over the years has tried and has been successful in getting more and more universities and graphic arts high schools on board is because we agree that education is really important. And some of that education can be on the job, but a lot of the education, of course, happens at university or at another school. And making sure that the right information is shared there is important. So the Gantour Group has a meeting next month in Ljubljana, Slovenia. We're actually invited there by the technical university there, who has PDF and everything around PDF and a lot of the Gantour Group content in the curriculum for students. And so who does try to spread the information to the students that end up in our industry. And we do see more adoption of such content and subjects in the curriculum of such universities, and that is really, really important. So yes, you have to. I don't want to teach designers how to do their job. Their job is to be creative, and we understand that. But I think if you're on the design side, knowing what the consequences are going to be from the creative choices you make, or knowing how to design something and then transfer it to a printer so that it can be printed with exactly the way you want it, is it's not optional. It is important. I mean, you can design the nicest thing possible and then send it to a printer who prints it wrong, and that is not good for anyone. So I think in the end, what it boils down to is you want there to be communication between the two parties. That is really what there should be.
Before David, before we come to end, there is a new question that is worth an answer. How to get an invite to the Ljubljana event? For that, you need to be a member of the Genvar group. So feel free, Arsene, no? Did I say something wrong?
Yes. So normally meetings are for members, but you can come as an observer as well.
Okay.
So that is definitely an option. Arsene, I would send an email to admin@gwg.org or to me and I'll forward it. That would work as well. You could join as an observer, and you could join as an observer either online. We do have Zoom meetings for the proceedings, so you can join remotely, or you could come there and participate in person. That is definitely possible. So admin@gwg.org, or send an email to one of us here, and then we'll forward it to Carol as well. It's 5 o'clock, but I still have 2 questions, which is very good. Will you create pre-flights for 7-color inkjet presses in the future? That depends on how you how you want that to be. Let's put it that way. So if you generate so a lot of the multicolor presses actually work by having either a CMYK or an RGB file, and then when you send it to the driver or the software that handles it, it will split it up into all the different colors. So that is certainly one possibility. If you really want to have a 7-color PDF file, then you can already create that today, and you could use a pre-flight profile that supports spot color, and I don't think you will have a lot of trouble pre-flighting it using that. There is no real dedicated 7-color pre-flight profile, for example. But I'm actually not sure that you would really need that in order to use most of the pre-flight functionality that is available today. But feel free to send me an email or send us an email, or again, admin@gwg.org, and we can take that offline and discuss further. Few publishers know about gwg.org. Would you agree, Loïc?
Yeah, to some extent, but it's coming back at the question from a moment ago. Even many printers and publishers are not even aware of the FX standard, so and why they should use it. So it's the reason why we have to hammer that message, because at some point in time, you know what? Okay, maybe I'm dreaming, but say that there is a printer using Genvar PREFLIGHT profiles, and suddenly there is a buyer that acknowledges that and sees that working with that printer using that, it works always fine. And then the buyer suddenly starts asking other suppliers to respect the same procedure of working with Genvar profiles. Yeah, it could help with spreading the knowledge, but yeah, it's a never-ending process of having this know for everyone. Yeah, but feel free to participate in sharing that message yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I agree. I think there is very little knowledge about standardization and PDFX and Gantt group across the whole industry. I mean, you don't have to limit it to publishers. It is just as true for printers and creative people and so it's across the whole industry that there is a little bit of an education problem, perhaps, when it comes to these things. If you can spread the message with the people that you get in contact with, please do. If you can share stuff on social media when we post something, please do. It helps. If you can pull people to webinars like this, or post the links to webinars on LinkedIn or on I'm old, so Facebook. If you're younger, maybe TikTok. It doesn't matter. If you can spread information on social media so that more people get aware that this exists and can start using it, then that would be really, really helpful. Yeah, absolutely. Is there a Gantt workgroup profile that can convert a CMYK PDF into a multicolor PDF? No, there is not. So the Gantt workgroup profiles that we talk about here are PREFLIGHT profiles. And what you should know is that some of the vendors, Enfocus, Calas, create profiles according to the guidelines that the Gantt workgroup creates. The Gantt workgroup is only interested in PREFLIGHT checks. So it only cares about checking the PDF file, not about fixing the PDF file. That is out of scope as far as the Gantt workgroup is concerned. Some of the vendors, like Calas, like Enfocus, have profiles that implement these Gantt workgroup specifications, and they typically add some fixes in there. Because otherwise too many files would fail, and there are a lot of things that you can fix where there is no real risk associated with the fix in the first place. But things like converting a CMYK file into a multicolor file are entirely out of scope for the Gantt workgroup by itself. There is of course technology that can do that. There is dedicated color software. I think about GMG, I think about Color Logic, and there's probably dozens of others. So there's dedicated software that can do these kinds of things, but that is a little bit outside of the scope for what the Gantt workgroup is dealing with. And then a kind of a disappointing question, perhaps, in the sense that I'm not sure I have a good answer. Is there a good book to learn about PDF?
PDF specification, maybe?
Yes, you could. It's about 1,000 pages, I think.
Very exciting.
Very exciting document, very highly technical. But you could, of course, look at the PDF specification. I don't know if there is a book that explains things in a simple way. Is there a PDF for dummies? I'm not sure.
There might be. The question is, which kind of information are you expecting? Are we talking about PDF as, I mean, the PDF? I was almost joking with the PDF specification, but are you looking at something very structural about PDF, or is it like working with Acrobat or working with PREFLIGHT tools? I think that's the very first question. And then, yeah, I think there is a book, but maybe that is not published anymore. That's the same. Feel free to send email to admin at ganttworkgroup.org, because honestly, I cannot. I know. I'm almost convinced that there is a book, but I cannot find it by heart right now. But certainly, if there is one, it's an old one.
Yeah, actually, Søren had a good point. Leonard, and he's not ex-Adobe, he is with Adobe, Leonard Rosenthal. He did write a book about PDF. I have not read it. I don't know at what level of complexity it was, but it would actually be a good idea to add some of that information, some of those resources to the Gantt workgroup website, perhaps. So that's something that we'll take up internally as well. That would make sense. Yeah, I don't think that, as someone else suggests here, I don't think that putting the PDF spec under your or the PDF specification under your pillow at night, that is going to make I don't think that works, Jochen. I mean, if you tried it and you know otherwise, fine. But I have not tried it. I doubt that that's going to work.
I will try this one. Yeah, I'm putting in the chat 2 links that I just found, but yeah, it's only links. It's not like I read the book and I can blindly recommend the books, but yeah, that's a starter.
So for a number of subtopics, check the white papers that the Gantua group does. There are a number of very nice white papers about transparency, about Office documents, about some of these things. They will not cover everything in PDF, but it may be a first start. And then yeah, it's a good point. We'll talk about that at the Gantua group meeting perhaps, and see if we can have some recommendations on the on our website. Did we answer everything now?
I think we did.
Yeah, so if we didn't answer your question, or you don't think that we answered it correctly or completely, send us an email and we'll take it offline. We're already 10 minutes over the time we were supposed to take, so I think this is a good ending point for the discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. It was good to see that even though the topic is perhaps basic, there are still a lot of people who show up, and I hope that you also learned something. Like I said, if you have questions, you can still send them to admin@gwg.org. The recording is going to be posted once it has been processed a little bit, and then yeah. There will be more webinars. There are always more webinars. When they are announced, when there is a date for them, you'll see them appear on the Gantua Group website. And I would invite you to join those as well. So thank you very much for joining. A very nice end of the day from my side, and hope to see you again in the future.
Bye, everyone.